Hello everyone. Today we look at CAT 2019 Slot 2, Section 1 VARC, one of the passages that had come in the reading comprehension area. I'll be reading out the passage first, then we'll understand the passage with respect to important words and the gist of the passage, and then we'll go on to the questions. British colonial policy went through two policy phases, or at least there were two strategies between which its policies actually oscillated, sometimes to its great advantage. At first, the new colonial apparatus exercised caution and occupied India by a mix of military power and subtle diplomacy, the high ground in the middle of the circle of circles. This, however, pushed them into contradictions. For whatever their sense of the strangeness of the country and the thinness of colonial presence, the British colonial state represented the great conquering discourse of Enlightenment rationalism entering India precisely at the moment of its greatest unchecked arrogance. As inheritors and representatives of this discourse, which carried everything before it, this colonial state could hardly adopt for long such a self denying attitude. It had restructured everything in Europe: the productive system, the political regimes, the moral and cognitive orders, and would do the same in India, particularly as some empirically inclined theorists of that generation considered the colonies a massive laboratory of utilitarian or other theoretical experiments. Consequently, the colonial state could not settle simply for eminence at the cost of its marginality. It began to take initiatives to introduce the logic of modernity into Indian society. But this modernity did not enter a passive society. Its initiatives were resisted by pre-existing structural forms. At times, there was a more direct form of collective resistance. Therefore, the map of continuity and discontinuity that this state left behind at the time of independence was rather complex and has to be traced with care. Most significantly, of course, initiatives for modernity came to assume an external character. The acceptance of modernity came to be connected ineradicably with subjection. This again points to two different problems, one theoretical, the other political. Theoretically, because modernity was externally introduced, it is explanatorily unhelpful to apply the logical format of the transition process to this pattern of change. Such a logical format would be wrong on two counts. First, however subtly, it would imply that what was proposed to be built was something like European capitalism. And in any case, historians have forcefully argued that what it was to replace was not like feudalism with or without modificatory adjectives. But more fundamentally, the logical structure of endogenous change does not apply here. Here, transformation agendas attack as an external force. This externality is not something that can be casually mentioned and forgotten. It is inscribed on every move, every object, every proposal, every legislative act, each line of causality. It comes to be marked on the EPO itself. This repetitive emphasis on externality should not be seen as a nationalist initiative that is so well rehearsed in Indian social science. Quite apart from the externality of the entire historical proposal of modernity, some of its contents were remarkable. Economic reforms, or rather alterations, did not foreshadow the construction of a classical capitalist economy with its necessary emphasis on extractive and transport sectors. What happened was the creation of a degenerate version of capitalism, what early dependency theorists called the development of the underdevelopment. Now let's look at the words that had come in this particular passage. This passage was clearly the toughest passage that had come in slot 2 last year. And so we need to look at some words with care and try to bring out the gist of this passage or what the author wanted to convey. So let's look at the words first. Um, the first word we get is oscillated, that is to swing back and forth. New colonial apparatus, the machinery used for colonialism, and at that time it was new with respect to the British. Caution, to, to be careful that there is no danger. Subtle, to be very indirect. Diplomacy is, of course, the policy that one uses to keep relations between nations. Contradictions is to be opposed to each other. Discourse would be the narrative out here of enlightenment rationalism. Enlightenment here obviously means it's capital E. It means uh, the intellectual movement in the late 17th and 18th centuries in Europe, uh, whose foundation was based on thinking and rational thought. So, the narrative of that time's thinking. Unchecked, unrestrained, arrogance, excessive pride, discourse would be narrative again. A self denying attitude, an attitude which denies one's own self or which does not take one's own self into consideration. Regimes out here would mean governments. Cognitive is the act of thinking, anything that is connected to thinking um, and reasoning out. Empirically inclined theorists are those theorists who were inclined towards observable facts. Utilitarian is practical. Theoretical would mean in theory or in terms of an idea. Eminence would mean greatness or fame in a particular area. Marginality would be an involuntary position at the margins. Modernity is the act of being modern. And in the case of the British, modernity represented the narrative of Enlightenment rationalism. Passive would be not active, would be uh, a society which accepted. But in this case, modernity did not enter a passive society, which means the society itself was active with its own thought. Resistance is not uh, accepting something that they wouldn't want to agree with. Traced is outlined. Came to assume is uh, came to characterize or came to have. Ineradicably is absolutely or without any scope of eradication. Subjection is the act of ruling someone. Transition process obviously is the process that the British wanted India to undergo from its own structural form to an enlightenment rationalism. Subtly is again very indirectly, very cleverly. European capitalism is a social and economic uh, system in which the profit and the industries are in the hands of private players. Forcefully would be with with a lot of gumption, with a lot of stress on it. Feudalism was the social system that characterized medieval Europe. Modificatory is explanatory adjectives out here. Endogenous is from within, an internal characteristic. Agendas would be underlying motives. Externality would be from outside. Casually is in a relaxed, informal manner. Inscribed is marked. Causality is the relationship between cause and effect. Epo is a period in time which is marked with a particular occurrence. Repetitive is, of course, to happen again and again. Nationalist initiative would mean an initiative to be seen as a nationalist. Remarkable is outstanding. Alterations are changes. Foreshadow is to be able to pre-indicate or indicate beforehand. Classical capitalist economy is a very good example of a classical style of economy, in this case capitalist. Extractive would mean removal of natural resources. Degenerate is to go into ruin. Dependency theorists are those theorists who believed in the dependency theory. Now the dependency theory states that resources flow from a periphery of poorer countries to a core of rich wealthy countries. Development of underdevelopment, that is developing underdevelopment. So these are some of the tough words and ideas that we come across in this particular passage. Now let's try to understand uh, the gist of the passage, what the author wants to say, what this passage is all about. If we look at the first paragraph talks about British colonial policy in India and how it went through two policy phases. It swung between two policy phases. The first one was how military power and diplomacy was used to control India. However, that was not completely uh, enough to let's say take hold of India. So the Britishers had to eventually take initiatives to introduce their way of thinking, the logic of modernity into Indian society. The problem, however, was that India had its own thought. The modernity, the so called modernity of the British, did not enter a passive society. So they were resisted. At some point, there were forms of direct resistance. And so there was a certain continuity and discontinuity that the British left behind at the time of independence because of this policy of theirs to push their modernity into the into Indian society. Then the author in the second paragraph talks about uh, that This policy of pushing modernity came to have a very external character, and it started getting identified with subjection, that the British were trying to rule the Indians. And the transition process was not smooth as the British would have liked it. Uh, in the first case, as we enter into the second half of the second paragraph, uh, the first problem that the Britishers faced is, unlike Europe, where there was feudalism which they converted into capitalism, that was not the case in India. So the 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 internal structure of Indian society was very different from other European nations which Britain had tried to colonize. Here, the transformation agendas were like an external force. And this externality is not very casual. It is inscribed on every move, every act, every proposal, and leads to a certain cause and effect. And it started to mark itself on that period of time. And this is what was very difficult for the British to do, to try to change India into the so-called enlightenment, through enlightenment rationalism, or by introducing modern ways of thought. Now, in the last paragraph, the author talks about uh, that the contents of this externality of the entire historical proposal of modernity were quite remarkable. There were economic reforms, there were changes, but we have to understand that it did not indicate the coming of a classical capitalist economy with its emphasis on um, removing uh, removing natural resources and transporting them. What happened as a result of the British colonial policy was a creation of a degenerate version of capitalism, what early dependency theorists call development of underdevelopment. So, if you look at this passage as a whole, it predominantly talks about how British colonial policy went from one phase to another. It had to go to the second phase, otherwise, it would have been marginalized. And how, in its second policy phase, it, it faced a lot of problems because uh, the Indian society was an active society, and it looked upon modernity being thrust upon it as subjection. And then as we move forward, uh, we also know that the Indian society was not feudal in nature, and so it was very difficult. It was unlike what the Britishers had experienced before. The internal change did not apply here. Okay, uh, agendas were looked upon as an external force, and though some of the contents of the entire policy were remarkable, uh, the economic reforms or alterations did not bring about a classical capitalist economy with its emphasis on certain sectors. What happened in India as a result of British colonial policy was a degenerate version of capitalism, what early dependency theorists called the development of underdevelopment. So basically, the passage outlines quite beautifully, the impact of uh, the policy changes, the two policy changes that the Britishers put upon India, with its focus on the second, where it tried to thrust Enlightenment rationalism onto the Indian society, the problems it faced, and after independence, as a result, what happened to India. So there was a development of underdevelopment, rather than a classical capitalist economy. This is what the passage is about. Now we come to the questions following this particular passage. Question 1. Which one of the following 5-word sequences best captures the flow of the arguments in the passage? So what is important is we have to get a 5-word sequence which best captures the flow of the arguments in the passage. If we look at option 1, if we start with military power and then colonialism. Now, colonialism was before military power. So, colonial policy or colonialism comes before military power. So, this cannot be our option. We can safely eliminate option 1. If we look at 2, colonial policy, fine. Arrogant rationality, it was not the rationality that was arrogant, it was the unchecked arrogance of the Indian situation on which the Britishers tried to impose their own rationality. So this itself is incorrect, and hence we can safely eliminate option 2. If we look at 3, colonial policy, fair enough. Enlightenment, okay. External modernity, yes. Subjection, yes. Underdevelopment. This 5-word sequence does capture the flow of the arguments in the passage in sequence. Let's look at 4 also. Military power, arrogance, laboratory. Now, laboratory is not, cannot come after arrogance, okay. And even when we go ahead, we find that this particular sequence does not match. So military power, arrogance, and then laboratory does not sort of fit in. So we can eliminate 4 as well. So we are left with option 3, colonial policy, enlightenment, external modernity, subjection, underdevelopment is the best 5-word sequence which captures the flow of the arguments in the passage. Let us look at question 2. Which of the following observations is a valid conclusion to draw from the author's statement that the logical structure of endogenous change does not apply here? Here transformation agendas attack as an external force. So what we have to remember with respect to the question is the author has made a statement, and the options will be possible valid conclusions that can be drawn. We have to pick which is the valid conclusion. Okay, so we have to be very clear about the author's statement. Now, what does the author say? The logical structure of endogenous change does not apply here. So he is talking about Indian society and how that endogenous change obviously means intrinsic change or change from within. And he says the logical structure of endogenous change does not apply here. So India already had a thought. So when the Britishers tried to thrust their modernity to it, it was not something which changed society in an endogenous manner, but it was looked upon as a subjection. Here transformation agendas attack as an external force. So the idea of modernity, of enlightenment rationalism was thrust upon Indian society, and this transformation which the Britishers wanted was looked upon as an external force to the already existing thought and structural forms of Indian society. So now let's look at the observations that are there in the options and which one of them is a valid conclusion. The transformation of Indian society did not happen organically, fair enough, but was forced by colonial agendas. So this seems to be a valid conclusion. Okay, but let's go ahead as well. The endogenous logic of colonialism can only bring change if it attacks and transforms external forces. Now, this is totally distorted. First of all, colonialism did not have an endogenous logic, or nothing about it is mentioned in the passage. And we can't say it can only bring about change, even if it did have an endogenous logic, if it attacks and transforms external forces. The colonialism itself was an external force which attacked the existing thought forms in Indian society. So this is distorted and can be easily eliminated. Let's look at 3. Indian society is not endogamous. Okay. Now this word itself is new. It is not there in the passage. But endogamous would mean something that is existing intrinsically. It is more accurately characterized as aggressively exogamous. Now, this is certainly not something that we can draw as a valid conclusion from what is written, because endogamous and exogamous is they are not mentioned. We are talking about endogenous change. Okay, and so this can be also easily eliminated. Fourth option: colonized societies cannot be changed through logic, they need to be transformed with external force. Now, this is an option uh, which comes a bit close, but we cannot say colonized societies cannot be changed, because in the case of India, the British tried to change through their modernity existing thought forms. Okay, and in India's case, that was looked upon as something that was external. Okay, so they need to be transformed with external force. We can't say for all colonized societies, or even for the Indian society. So we can eliminate 4 also. If you see carefully, 2 and 4 are distortions. 3 is not mentioned. We do not really know what they mean by endogamous and exogamous. Okay. And we are left with 1, which is an observation, which is a valid conclusion to draw from the author's statement, that the transformation of Indian society did not happen organically, but was forced by colonial agendas. So the answer option is 1. Let's look at question 3. All of the following statements, if true, could be seen as supporting the arguments in the passage, except. So we have to be careful with this question. First and foremost, we have to keep each and every statement to be temporarily true. And we have to see if they are kept temporarily true, do they support the arguments in the passage? Out of the 4 options, 3 will support, 1 will not, and that will be our answer. So let's look at option 1. The introduction of capitalism in India was not through the transformation of feudalism as happened in Europe. Now, this clearly supports the arguments in the passage, because it is written in the passage that the Indian structure was different from what was the case in Europe. And the introduction of capitalism in India was not through the transformation of feudalism as happened in Europe. So this supports the arguments in the passage, and hence it cannot be our answer. If we look at 2, if true that the change in British colonial policy was induced by resistance to modernity in Indian society. Now, this is a very clever distortion. The Britishers first tried uh, to take hold of India through military power and subtle diplomacy. But they saw that they were being marginalized. And hence, they wanted to introduce modernity, their ways of thinking, to Indian society. And this was resisted. So, we cannot say that the change in British colonial policy was induced by resistance, because there was a change to uh, thrust trying to thrust their forms of thinking, their modernity to Indian society resisted and looked upon it as subjection. So this is a distortion of what is written, and if true, it does not support the arguments in the passage. So most probably this is our answer. But also let's go ahead and see if true that throughout the history of colonial conquest, natives have often been experimented on by the colonizers. Now, this is something which we can say supports the arguments in the passage. It is mentioned in the first paragraph itself, and because it supports, it cannot be our answer. Let's look at option 4. Modernity was imposed upon India by the British and therefore led to underdevelopment. Now, this is a flow of thought that the author finally concludes with and says that because the Britishers tried to bring in their ways of thought and try to thrust it upon India, which already has had its own thought forms. Okay, it finally, when they left India, uh, it rather than developing into classical capitalist economy, there was a development of the underdeveloped. So this is something that supports the arguments in the passage and hence cannot be our answer. So option 2, if true, does not support the arguments in the passage. That is, the change in British colonial policy was induced by resistance to modernity in the Indian society, and hence this is our answer. Let's look at question 4. It's written, consequently, the colonial state could not settle simply for eminence at the cost of its marginality. It began to take initiatives to introduce the logic of modernity into Indian society. Which of the following best captures the sense of this statement? Now we have to be very careful about this statement. This statement comes in the first paragraph of the passage, and the context of this sentence is that the British colonial policy first came up with military power and subtle diplomacy to take hold of India. But when it saw that it was being marginalized, though it was being given eminence, and it didn't want to be marginalized, it began to take initiatives to introduce the logic of modernity into Indian society. So, uh, the sense of this statement is that the British colonial policy shifted because it didn't want to be marginalized to from military power and subtle diplomacy to introducing the logic of modernity into Indian society. Now let's see which option captures the sense of this statement. The colonial state's eminence was unsettled by its marginal position. Therefore, it developed Indian society by modernizing it. Now, the very first part of this statement itself is a distortion. It was not that the colonial state's eminence was unsettled. The colonial state achieved eminence, but was also marginalized. And because it didn't want to get marginalized, it developed Indian society. So the first part of this option is completely distorted and does not capture the sense of the statement in the question. So we can eliminate it. Let's look at 2. The colonial enterprise was a costly one. So to justify the cost, it began to take initiatives to introduce the logic of modernity into Indian society. This is an easy option to eliminate because it is not about cost. When in the option they say eminence at the cost of its marginality, they're not talking about a cost in terms of currency. So, uh, So this was a costly one, and justification of the cost it began to do something is completely distorted and does not capture the sense of the statement. We can safely eliminate 2. If we look at 3, the cost of the colonial state's eminence was not settled. Therefore, it took the initiative of introducing modernity into Indian society. Again, it is not about cost. It is not about the cost of the colonial state's eminence and it not being settled, etc. In fact, it gained eminence, but it was marginalized, and therefore it took the initiative of introducing modernity. So the first part of this particular option is also distorted, and hence we can safely eliminate option 3. We are left with option 4. The colonial state felt marginalized from Indian society because of its own modernity. Therefore, it sought to address that marginalization by bringing its modernity to change Indian society. Now, this captures the sense of the statement. What this option says is that the colonial state, though it had used military power and subtle diplomacy, was being marginalized, though it was looked upon as eminent because of its own ways of thinking. It sought to address this marginalization and wanted to become mainstream by bringing its modernity to change Indian society. So this option best captures the sense of the author's statement in the question. So our answer for question 4 is option 4. Let's look at question 5. All of the following statements about British colonialism can be inferred from the first paragraph except that it. So there are 4 statements that are going to be presented to us. 3 of them can be inferred from the very first paragraph itself that they are true about British colonialism. There'll be one option which is either not true or we cannot decide. We cannot infer. So that will be our answer. So let's look at 1. British colonialism was at least partly an outcome of Enlightenment rationalism. This is very clearly written, okay, in the first paragraph itself, that the Enlightenment, which happened in Europe in the late 17th and 18th centuries, shaped the rationalism and thought process of the Britishers, and they took it forward. Okay, so was at least partly an outcome of Enlightenment rationalism is something we can clearly infer, and because we can infer, it is not our answer. Second, British colonialism was at least partly shaped by the project of European modernity. This too we can infer from the first paragraph, because the British colonialism, okay, thought in terms of the Enlightenment rationalism that it had gone through in the 17th and 18th century, and uh, its colonialism was shaped by the project of European modernity, which it brought about in other parts of Europe uh, in trying to colonize the other states. So this also is something that can be inferred about British colonialism, and hence is not our answer. If you look at 3, British colonialism allowed the treatment of colonies as experimental sites. Now this too can be inferred from the passage, because it is written that some theorists, especially those who were empirical in nature, had observed that British colonists used colonies as experimental sites, and hence we can infer this as well from the first paragraph. Now if you look at 4, British colonialism faced resistance from existing structural forms of Indian modernity. Now, this is a very, very tricky option. Yes, British colonialism faced resistance. And it faced resistance when it tried to thrust its logic of modernity to existing structural forms of Indian thought, not Indian modernity. It is this one word that makes this particular sentence something that we cannot infer from the first paragraph. So our answer turns out to be option 4. We cannot infer that British colonialism faced resistance from existing structural forms of Indian modernity. And hence, this is our answer. So, British colonialism faced resistance from existing structural forms of Indian modernity cannot be inferred from the first paragraph. Hence, our answer is option 4.
Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get notifications of future videos.